The year is 1888. The place, Whitechapel, London. The city was a monument to progress, yet its dark alleys harbored a secret. A calculated shadow stalked the desperate and the poor, initiating a reign of terror unlike any other. This is the story of a predator who defined fear, known only by his chilling signature, Jack the Ripper. Welcome to Global History Tales. If you're ready to uncover more thrilling, mysterious, and insightful historical stories like this one, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel now. Don't forget to click that bell icon so you never miss an upload. Today, we step into the relentless fog of Victorian London to face a cold case that remains the deepest cut in history. Whitechapel was a world away from the gilded halls of central London. It was a region of overwhelming poverty, where overcrowding and disease were common. It was here, amidst the desperation, that the killer found his targets. The 5 canonical victims, Marianne Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly, were women struggling at the margins of society. They were united not by any personal connection, but by their economic vulnerability. The attacks, starting in August 1888, were swift and brutally surgical, suggesting a mind that was not merely violent, but calculating and methodical. The police quickly realized this was not random street violence. They were dealing with a systematic threat to public safety. The Metropolitan Police were under immediate, massive pressure from the public and the press. Yet, their investigative tools were rudimentary. This was an era before modern forensics. They lacked fingerprint analysis, DNA testing, or even reliable photography at the scene. Detectives like Chief Inspector Frederick Aberline relied on witness interviews, local informants, and traditional methods. The challenge was immense. A killer operating silently under the cover of perpetual fog and darkness, in a maze of alleys where no one asked questions. If you were a police officer in 1888, without modern technology or CCTV, how different would your primary strategy be compared to a detective working today? Consider the sheer frustration of knowing a killer is close, but having no scientific means to prove it. This technological gap significantly contributed to the case remaining unsolved. The tragedy of the Ripper case lies not just in the murders, but in the social conditions that enabled them. The poverty and neglect in Whitechapel meant that the victims, being marginalized, were initially treated with less urgency by the wider establishment. This is one of the case's biggest flaws. However, on the positive side, the scale of the horror did eventually force the wealthy classes and the government to confront the dreadful living conditions in the slums, which eventually led to some social reforms. If we compare the social safety nets of today with those of Victorian England, do you think our modern systems are adequately protecting the most vulnerable in society? Or are we still failing them in different ways? The Ripper case serves as a harsh historical mirror, reflecting society's tendency to overlook those living in the shadows. The case transcended local tragedy and became global sensationalism through the mail. Soon after the initial murders, Scotland Yard received a string of letters, reportedly from the killer. The most famous was the Dear Boss letter, signed with the terrifying pseudonym Jack the Ripper. Whether this letter was a genuine confession or a cynical hoax by a journalist seeking fame is still hotly debated. Regardless, the name stuck. The press immediately seized upon it, transforming the unseen killer into a terrifying, almost mythical figure. This branding gave the murderer a persona and amplified the public's fear exponentially. The media's relentless coverage fueled the frenzy, which was arguably a bad aspect of the investigation, as it created massive distraction and encouraged numerous copycat hoaxes. The killer's confidence peaked dramatically on the night of September 30th, 1888, known as the Double Event. Elizabeth Stride was murdered, followed less than an hour later by Catherine Eddowes. The brutality showed a clear, frightening escalation. The good thing was that the police were now patrolling intensely, and they managed to find a piece of Eddowes' apron leading to a cryptic piece of writing on a wall nearby. The bad thing was that the killer was operating with shocking speed and audacity, demonstrating that the massive police presence was still not enough to contain him. This dual attack showed the killer's operational skill. He could strike twice in quick succession and vanish completely, suggesting he was intimately familiar with the intricate network of Whitechapel's dark streets. The small piece of apron found led police to a section of wall near Goulston Street, where a message was scrawled. The message, known as the Goulston Street Graffito, mentioned the Jews. Fearing the message would inflame the already volatile anti-Semitic tensions and potentially spark riots, the police commissioner ordered the writing to be immediately washed away. This decision was socially responsible, but forensically disastrous. It destroyed potential evidence linked to the killer's mindset and location. If you were the commissioner, facing the choice between preserving a potentially vital clue and preventing widespread civil disorder, what decision would you have prioritized? This single act highlights the impossible ethical and practical dilemmas faced by law enforcement during that chaotic time. The suspects proposed over the years are endless, ranging from common laborers to royalty. Two of the most frequently discussed suspects are Aaron Kosminski, a local Polish barber and resident of an asylum, and Montague John Druitt, a barrister who died shortly after the murders ceased. The investigation, however, could never produce irrefutable evidence against any single person. Every theory, though compelling, relies on circumstantial evidence, flawed Victorian eyewitness accounts, or later forensic attempts that are often inconclusive. The ultimate benefit of studying the suspects is seeing how the public mind tries to impose order on chaos. The negative side is that this proliferation of theories has perhaps only deepened the mystery, making the true killer harder to identify. The terror came to an abrupt end after the murder of Mary Jane Kelly in early November 1888. The Ripper ceased his activities, vanished without a trace, and the letters stopped. The police never made a public arrest, and the case was eventually filed away unsolved. However, the impact of the Ripper was undeniable. The case served as a harsh wake-up call, exposing the shocking disparity between the rich and poor in London. It initiated lasting police reforms, including the reorganization of Scotland Yard and a greater emphasis on forensic documentation. A good outcome born from a terrible event. The Ripper legacy is a permanent shadow, symbolizing the failure of authority to protect its most vulnerable citizens. The question of who was Jack the Ripper remains the most debated mystery in criminal history. Was he a wealthy physician, a desperate pauper, or simply a fleeting ghost of the London fog? The lack of closure has immortalized the killer, turning him into a cultural phenomenon rather than a solved crime. It challenges us to look beyond the headlines and examine the social failures of the time. We've covered the clues, the context, and the theories. Now, we want to hear from you. Based on all the evidence and modern understanding, who do you believe Jack the Ripper was? And what single mistake do you think cost the police the case? Share your insights and theories in the comments below. We read every comment. Thank you for joining Global History Tales.